Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode here on the Mindful Experiment. Excited to have you guys here as it's been we took a couple weeks off here and we're excited to get back and get back into a sequence and schedule. We have some awesome guests that we have interviewed, and we'll be launching those out in 2 weeks from today. And we'll be going back to our normal regular schedule of 1 week with me, 1 week with a guest. And appreciate you guys, your patience, appreciate your support. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, it helps and get out there. I don't know if you guys know if this is your first time listening or not, but we do have a free Facebook group that you can join. And what it is I share a ton of stuff like reels and content to help elevate your mind to a whole nother level. And eventually, we'll be doing lives of our Facebook. We're looking at some programs right now to see where we can launch this live so we can have you guys be a little bit, have more incentives to be there and have everything in a central location when it comes to that and so much more. Also, I don't know if you've been listening to podcasts, you've heard me say this in the beginning, we do have an amazing online course that we've launched that was actually by requested from many when it comes to my book, Decoding the Matrix. And this program is called Decode Your Matrix. A lot of people read the book and they wanted to go deeper into how they can really put this as an applicable way to make this a reality in their life, how to break away from the constructs and the programs, how to become aware of that. Because when we could break free from the programs, I really believe that's freedom and fulfillment. And when we do that for ourselves, then what ends up happening is we allow others now to do the same. It's a ripple effect. And this is true awakening. This is true elevating our consciousness to see the realms of the world vastly different than what we have before. And it's really a powerful, subtle, but very powerful way of doing that. And so I have a 6-week online course that I am offering a massive discount for all the people that are part of the Mindful Experiment community. Check it out. It's in the show notes. I'm only leaving this up for a limited time before I go and put it at a full price. So check that out. Today's episode, it's interesting. I saw something that a friend posted, and it was an image of a mother breastfeeding a baby. And he was going on this rant of how disgusting it is and blah, 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 blah. And he said, some people may argue with me on this. And I kept reading. And I'm like, this just doesn't sound like him. I'm like, there's a catch here. The energy didn't seem authentic to him. But I was like, let me just keep reading before I make any judgments. And I get to the bottom, and little behold, the disgusting part was not the breastfeeding. There was actually a pair of flip-flops sitting on the dinner table at a restaurant. And so I started laughing. I was like, I knew it. I could just tell the energy wasn't him. I was like, let me do a little experiment. I'm going to test this out. I want to see, because two things. One, so I think it's like almost 70 or 70% of people, if you put a post of something and they just see the headline, they believe the headline and say that's what it is before even reading the article. Almost 70% of people do that. So I already knew the data. But I'm like, let me see how fast people react, right? We're so impulsive. That I was like, let me just see how much of a reaction I can get. And then let me see people call me out, like bash me a name or whatever that may be, because I knew that was going to happen too. This thing's got over 100 likes. I think I have almost 80 comments on it. And one of the things in there is I can't tell you how many times, people who know me, first of all, let me just be very, very straightforward. I'm a huge advocate for breastfeeding, massively. I'm a huge advocate for women when it comes to natural health and holistic and all that. I can go down. I'm 100%, hands down. In my office, I told moms you can breastfeed anywhere you want. If you want privacy or you want a little bit more relaxation away from the noise, a little bit calmer, a little nicer environment, we had a whole room dedicated just for breastfeeding in my own office. We were a huge advocate for it. So I want to be very clear with that. The point of this was to see how many people react. And yeah, there was a lot. Some people were like, I was ready to let fury on you. I was ready to do this. And they're all ready to fight. And I sat there and I'm like, okay, this is a great experiment for me because I want to see, one, do people even read things at the end anymore? Which we all know they don't. Most people don't. I've been at fault of that too at times. I'm more, let me just get the main bulk of things. Details, I'll figure it out later. My wife, she's the opposite. She likes to get all the details. So we work so well together. So if we do something, I'm like, please read this or please go over that because I know you will. And when I was studying, I have one of my best friends. He's into the details. I'm not. So it was great. I get the main concept. He'll go into the little fine nooks and crannies of things. And it was a perfect world. But the point is, I had a lot of people, some people, probably, I don't know, maybe 15, 20%, called me out on things, thought that I was against breastfeeding and all that stuff. Why am I sharing all this with you? Well, I want to share two concepts of this, right? A lot of times in the world of Facebook and social media, people just love to argue. And it's amazing how we've become a world to where we won't say something like that in someone's face in person or respond in a certain way in person. But man, behind a keyboard, behind a computer, when no one's there and you have to deal with the confrontation, oh yeah, it's a whole different world. But I wanted to say this. Anytime in life when you react and you want to, whatever that is, be careful of that. Our reactions, one, we give our power away. We're letting whatever we saw, whatever the voices, whatever you read, whatever XYZ is controlling you. It has disturbed your peace. When you allow your peace to be disturbed, you can be easily controlled. Fear is the greatest control mechanism. We know this from a scientific perspective, that when it comes to fear from COVID, they said people who were put in a state of fear, we can control their behaviors and how they react. Right? If I say fear this, then I know that I can give you a solution to that to do something else. It's easy. It's a control mechanism in some way, shape, or form. When we react to people, whatever what that is, even if someone calls you a bad name or did XYZ, you gave your power away, your creative power. Never let someone take your power away. Now, it's easier said than done, right? Life, it happens to me too. There are some things I will not stand for. I mean, I'll stand for. I mean, there are some things that I will not tolerate in my life. And I'm okay with that. But I don't let my emotions get worked up. I will center them before I respond. No, I didn't say react. I said respond. And so when we look at our lives, how are we showing up? How are we reacting? How are we responding? Are we responding or reacting? What are we doing? Are we letting people control us in some way, shape, or form? This is the most easiest mechanism about control. It's also the most common thing that we do to give our power away. And the point I'm trying to make is when we do things like this, or when we read things, right? It's just like this in social media. I do this sometimes, and I love social media because I could test this out so many different ways. I experiment in so many ways. Because I'll say, oh, people react this way. No, I may have not read studies on this. I don't know if there's data and research on it. I don't know. But I have 5,000 friends on Facebook. So I'm like, you know what? Let me go ahead and let me throw this out there and let me see what responses I get. And it's fascinating because there's certain reactions that will happen. And then I'm like, well, that's a projection of where they are. Right? They're sharing of where they are, what they're seeing. And not even a projection of where they are. It's more of our brain will fill in the gaps. That's what I mean by this. Because I'm saying something in text. And text is 90% of the time misunderstood. Why? Because there's no tonality, there's no body language, there's nothing there. It's just black and white. And what happens is when you do stuff like this, people will fill in the gaps based on where they are, their life, their experiences, and so much more. This is what the brain does. This is how it survives. It will fill in the gaps based on your vibration. At the end of the day, if we're talking about vibration in quantum realms or quantum fields or quantum energy, this is where what people are going to do. So if someone sees the world and they're a higher consciousness level and they're seeing things in a more positive light, they're going to have more of an understanding. They'll be able to say, they won't go and take that in a negative way or pull or say, hey, that meant this in a negative or a lower vibration. They may see it in a positive, or there may be more understanding where the opposite is true, right? So when we look at our lives, how much are we assuming something, which means you're filling in the gaps and not seeing for what it is, right? We all do this. I do this. It's an automatic process to the brain. Because a lot of times we say stories that aren't true. And the stories we tell ourselves of what may be is going to be a filling of past experiences. That's what your brain does. And so when we look at, if you're in business, you're going to let past experiences dictate where things are going. If it's a relationship, it's the same thing. With your health, it's the same thing. Family relationships, intimate relationships, you name it. We fill in these gaps. And this is where assumptions come out. And this is where when you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and me, right? And so how do we get around this? Okay, cool concept. You understand this works, is how this happens. But how do we get around this? The best thing to do, and it's hard, don't judge. Ask questions. Act like you don't know nothing. Act like you don't understand anything. And ask questions. It always fascinates me when I put certain posts on Facebook that people will not ask a question. Instead, they'll just assume. They'll assume that I'm this way or that way or this and all that stuff, without asking any question of where my intention is with it. And what about in your life? Are we asking questions? If you have kids, especially older kids, you ask certain questions, understand what they're coming from, where their essence is, right? A lot of times, if you're trying to talk to a kid logically under the ages by age 6, 7, it's gonna be a lot harder. They're not fully developed at that stage. Instead, it's being more empathetic and connecting from an emotional standpoint. That's a whole nother conversation. Eventually, I'm gonna have some experts talk about those things. Because right now in my life, I'm studying a ton of child psychology, not just because I have a 15-month-old, but also because that kind of work is what I'm trying to dive deeper into to help my clients with, to break through from a subconscious perspective, from a neurodevelopment perspective, from a rewiring the brain perspective. Because if I can have them understand what their childhood and development side has done, then I can go ahead and help rewire them into new patterns of what they can do for success. And so when we look at our life, when it comes to filling in the gaps and stuff, a lot of times you have to think that your brain's playing a trick on you. And it's not doing this intentionally. It's just doing this for survival. It's filling in the gaps of your past experiences of what you've been through. And so when you understand that, then you have to tell you, what if my brain is doing that? What if the feeling that I think this is what they're really saying and I'm emotionally charged and this is what it is just your brain filling in the gaps? I can't tell you how many times I felt like I was 100% right on something and I was wrong. And now my motto is, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I got it wrong. I hope I misunderstood the situation. I hope it wasn't what I thought it was. And so again, what's the first thing we do is think and understand that your brain's always playing a trick on you. Because do you think you really know when your brain is filling in the gaps or not? There is a way. It's a practice. It's very subtle, but there's a practice to it. Instead, let's just make it easy and just assume 100% of the time that your brain's playing a trick on you. When you come from that level, you're not going to assume. What you're end up going to do is just ask a lot more questions and get clarity. And there's ways you can get clarity. Okay. So there's ways to communicate. And one of them is a feedback. One of them is clarity, which I'll talk about. That's questions. I love doing that. That's the one I love. It's annoying as heck. Even as a doc, even in relationships, when I'm like asking questions I know the answer to, it's really just to make sure we're 100% clear on this. And there's paraphrasing, right? And so feedback is you hear someone say something and say, this is what I hear you saying. This is what you mean. And it's getting clarity on that, or you're getting more understanding to what they're saying. The clarity is just asking questions to understand, to define, to get to the specific point. And then paraphrasing is saying, if I can go ahead and let's say they say something to you, and you can say, just so I understand, this is what it sounds like you're saying to me. And then you paraphrase what they said. And these are the 3 ways that you can enhance communication, reduce assumptions, and actually understand people better. And you'll start to realize in this journey that it's not what you think it may be, right? Now, for some of you, your mind may be firing, saying, what the heck, no, this is what it is, and that's all it is. But a lot of times we go into assumptions, especially in a heavy mind information era. We like to put labels on things and put people in boxes. This is just what we've been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years since we've been in this era. And we continue to do it, right? You get to know someone, then you go, oh, they said this. Oh, they're that type of person. Oh, they said that. They're this type of person. All right. And it's funny. I mean, look with COVID and all that went through there, or you look at the matter. It could be religions. It could be so many different things. And we want to put people under a box and limit them. And this is what creates more divide. That does not unite humanity back together. That's what we really need. We want to overcome all this stuff. But instead, it creates more divide. And so I think if we can get to understanding our communication a little better, this will help you in your business. This will help you in your career. This will help you with your relationships. It'll help you with your kids. It'll help you with every aspect of your life when it comes to working with other humans, is because we're coming from a place to where we're not assuming and we're hearing them out. I think too much times in this world today, we're just assuming too much. And we don't take time anymore to just slow down. Read something through before you make an opinion. Take some time to really just understand where someone is. We're not meant to be put in boxes. We're not. Humans are their own unique expression. Each single human being is their own unique expression. We need to stop doing that to others, because in the end, we're doing that to ourselves. So just to do a little flip on all this, you need to stop putting yourself in the box. Because if you do that for others, you're doing it to yourself. You hold yourself in the box. You hold yourself in a certain criteria. Hold yourself to think this is what you are. You have judgments and labels and opinions about yourself. And at the end of the day, you're not letting yourself express. You're not letting yourself thrive. You're not letting yourself expand. You're limiting yourself in who you are. Because at the end of the day, what we do to others is actually what we do to ourselves. And we can't be more compassionate to others or more understanding to others or wanting to, break the divide to others unless we do that with ourselves first. All things in life start with ourselves. And if we don't focus there, then we don't really make these huge, true changes. I couldn't forgive others. I come from an Italian family. Let me tell you, grudges are known to be held strong for the most stupid reasons. I say that now. I had to learn how to forgive myself and know I was not perfect, because I held myself up such to a high regard for many different reasons. And when I started to learn to forgive myself, I started to see I had no more grudges on people. I didn't let things bother me as much anymore, but I forgave myself. And it was okay for me to make mistakes. Am I still hard on myself? Of course I am. Do I sometimes take a little harder to let go or forgive or give myself some credit? Absolutely. I'm not going to say I have it all mastered. But what I do know is that it helps me if there's a wrongdoing or something comes up or whatever that is. I've learned to forgive myself in that process. Just as I've learned to be softer and more compassionate with myself, I've seen that come out of me more now to others. And so if we are assuming, if we put people in a box, it's because we do it to ourselves. So one, we talked about in today's podcast, how to always act like your brain's playing a trick on you. Always, okay? Second, we got to improve our communication. So we don't assume. We ask for feedback. We do feedback process of communication. We do clarity, asking a ton of questions, or we paraphrase what they said, right? We want to really do this. This may seem sometimes of a nuisance, a nuance to people, but I'm telling you, it works. I used to train people on this and work on this I used to speak at corporations, be flown out to speak. And this is something that one of the aspects I would work on is help with communication. It works wonders and it makes things so much easier, right? But the third is the most important. It all starts with you, with yourself. Get clear with yourself. Ask feedback to yourself. When you have that negative thought, is that really me? Is that really what and I can go, I'm kind of going off a little tangent here because I'm saying it's about, let's say a negative thought, but it's the same concept. Is that really what I truly care for? Is that really what matters? What is this going to do for me right now? Me worrying or doing this or doing that, how's that going to serve me into the future? Does that future self sound like that? Does that future self think that way? Do they talk like that? Share those stories? But more importantly, tailoring it back, circling it full circle back to you with what we talked about is, do I put myself in a box? Do I limit myself? What's the stories that I'm telling myself? and how am I looking at myself or where I'm at and what I'm doing in my life, relationships, health, and so forth. And if you be brutally honest, it opens up the doors to many other things. So that's what I got for y'all today. Next week, you're going to see me back one more time. And then, like I said, we're going to start. We got some great guests coming on, and we've been holding off a little bit. Had some schedule changes we had to get situated, but now we're going to be launching them out, and I'm excited to get them out there. But I want to thank you again, as always. If you made it this far and you're still listening, please subscribe. Please share a review. It really helps out the podcast. And I look forward to talking to you all next week. Until then, have an amazing weekend, an amazing week. Be amazing because you are. And I'll talk to you next time.